And I have the privilege of just having two amazing women here, and I am going to introduce them. And they have so many credentials that I'd like to just go to their credentials now. And we're discussing living in peace and harmony, exploring the pros and cons of a world government. So we have Pamela Schreiner and Dr. Ibtissam Klait. Now, these are women who have so many between them. They just have so much knowledge. Pamela Schreiner has always seen the systems and structures that are around us, and she delves into how do they impact our world. And she's worked in high tech for 22 years, redesigning the architecture of a massive computer system, amongst other things. She also worked for 12 years as an organizational consultant, doing many things, including organizational redesign. After she left the traditional work world, Pamela studied complexity science, which led to a much deeper understanding of the principles she'd been seeing in computer and human systems. That's so interesting to me. And we have Dr. Ibtissam Klait. Apart from being a wife and a mom of 4, she has a doctorate in international relations. She's pursuing a Master of Education. She's been accepted as a prospective doctoral student in public policy. She teaches online, she teaches program development, and she has a commitment to education, from research in information security management to teaching English and international affairs. And I'm just very interested to see how both of you, Pamela and Dr. Ibtissam, how you weave together and discuss this important topic. So I am going to give the floor to you.
Thank you for the introduction. Thank you. And thank you, esteemed guests, for attending and joining this important webinar. Together, we are going to discover the advantages and disadvantages of a world government. Pamela, shall I start my presentation?
Let's do the icebreaker first.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Yeah. So I'd like to get to know all of you a little bit that have joined this room and ask you a question. So to do a little icebreaker so that we get to know each other. And so my questions are going to be, what is your name? Where are you on our beautiful planet? And what would be a characteristic that you would like to see in a global world government? So just a few words, and I will select you. So please turn on your mic, and if you don't want to speak, then you can leave your mic and your camera off. But so I'll go around what I see on the screen here. So your name, your place, and the characteristics you'd like to see in a global world government. So, and we'll do this quickly. So I'll begin with Hasina.
So I'm Hasina Patel from Newcastle, South Africa. Characteristics I want to see in a world government. And I'm sure I'm stealing Tom's here. I want to see personal and collective sovereignty.
Thank you. And Tom?
Thank you. Tom Acklin here, East Coast, US. I'm in Frederick, Maryland, which is just north of the DC metro area. And I travel quite a bit. And I think what I'd like to see as a characteristic of a supportive, interactive world government that knows evolution, right? We have a pet phrase, humanity as organism thrives. And this, to me, is the most important missing of the past several years, and maybe of the past couple of, progressively over the generations, we have lost this community. And I would suggest that we can be just as poignant here on screen as we would be in around the campfire, although I'd love to be around the campfire with everybody. And I think that's the characteristic, is a welcoming collective that I won't say is missionless or purposeless. Certainly you can't have a collective without some sort of personality fingerprint of some sort, ideologically. But it's an ideology. A collective government would offer a platform that encourages evolution of the individual and of the collective itself.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Shamina?
I'm Shamima Patel from Newcastle, South Africa. And I think building on that, it's the listening and the willingness to serve, to grow, to evolve for the people, with the people.
And Anne-Marie? We can't hear you, Anne-Marie.
You are muted, Miss Anne.
Yes, Anne-Marie Hogue from Ottawa. And I would like to see the world government where people collaborate for the public good of everyone.
Thank you. Richard Schultz?
Richard Schultz, and the river behind me is the Saskatchewan River. So I'm in Northeast Saskatchewan in Canada. And it's not actually there. It's a picture, as I assume you know. But I care about dialogue. I care about bottom-up processes. How do we reestablish trust from the bottom up with listening and giving people voice and finding how people find their gifts and contribution to the world versus pushing down. So a bottom-up, connecting with gifts through dialogue, through voice, rather than debate and argument.
Thank you, Richard.
Matthew?
Impressive.
Matthew?
Yeah, hi. From Northern California. So, yeah, I would say for two things, two sides of the coin here. One is a maximization of freedom and diversity, so that it's not a world authoritarian kind of government, but I see more of a, it's like the United Nations, and I support the United Nations. And instead of thinking it as a government, actually, I think it's better to think of all this as alliances. It's agreements and alliances between nations and different diverse parts of the world on common values, on things that we have to share, that we share, and common goals. And part of those common goals that I'd like to see everybody agree to and share, sort of the foundations of the United Nations that's already there, based on human rights. Dignity of people, and a little bit more economic fairness in the world, which is a more difficult one, and of course protecting our natural world. I mean, that's really important. That we see there's certain things that need to be collaborated on a grander scale, such as climate solutions and solving the ecological crisis of the world. And so, nations and people and cultures have to get together and agree on these big things without being too authoritarian and controlling.
Thank you. Moira?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Moira Raymer. I'm in Montreal. And I think what's most important is for a government that acknowledges the importance of the planet and nature as much as people that live on it.
Thank you. Ava?
Yes, as I said earlier, I'm in Ottawa, Canada. And I think my first reaction is that I would not like to see a world government, because I have not seen anything good coming from governments in recent years. I can't think of a good government in the world right now, unfortunately. But clearly we do benefit in some ways from having international treaties and laws and an international criminal court and, you know, and gatherings to try and negotiate action around climate change and so on. So I think there are international platforms and mechanisms for people to meet, for countries to meet and try to collaborate. But I don't see us, unfortunately, being able to go further than that right now, from what I've seen.
Thank you. And Geeta, you don't have your camera on. Do you want to speak or not?
Are you talking to me, Geeta?
Yes.
Oh, I don't know why I don't have my camera on. Okay. Oh, there I am. Yeah, I look terrible. But yeah, I think that what everybody said is really, really important. And sort of to piggyback on what was just said, what we need is the ability for everybody to facilitate those discussions and to have facilitation skills in a sense, although we all have them naturally as well. If we're looking to not just be heard, but to hear other people. So if everybody, you know, is skilled in having a conversation, or simply has the mindset that the other person's voice is equally important to your own voice, and to facilitate the ability for everybody to speak, then that, you know, to me, that's just fundamental.
Thank you, Geeta. So thank you all. It was really nice to hear from you, and a lot of really good ideas here. And you might notice that I used very much of a control-oriented way, because I selected who was going to speak next, which is ouch, ouch, ouch. But anyway, so I'm going to pass the floor to Ibtissam, who's going to give a presentation first about the pros of world government, and then I'll talk about the cons, and then we'll have a little discussion.
Okay, thank you, Pamela, and thank you, esteemed guests. Let me share my screen. Just a moment, please. Can you see it? Is it displayed correctly? Can you see the slides?
Yes.
We can see it, but you might want to use the slideshow option.
How do I do this?
Up in the menu.
In the menu?
Up a little bit. Yep. Yeah. Down. Yeah. Down
Here?
a touch. No, down a little bit, and then there's a slideshow option.
Just a moment, please. I'm perplexed.
Whatever works for you, this will work fine. We
Okay.
Up on the top
Yeah,
orange bar, up to some, on the orange bar, where you see file, home, insert the fifth or sixth one over is slideshow.
Ah, yes, here. Yes, I see it. Slideshow. Okay, then what I do?
From beginning on the left.
From beginning on the left.
On the left, Yeah.
On the
No, no.
gray bar, the gray bar.
Okay.
Go click on slideshow again,
I am a slideshow. Okay.
and then go all
From
the
the
way.
beginning. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Good.
This is what
Thank you,
world government
thank
looks
you.
like.
I learned something new. I'm perplexed, I know how, but I'm perplexed. Sorry for the inconvenience. The pros of a world government. Navigating global challenges together. Introduction. The topic at hand is the concept of a world government, exploring its potential advantages and the positive impact it could have on global peace, cooperation, and prosperity. Growing complexity of global challenges. In the 21st century, global challenges are more complex due to heightened interconnectedness. Traditional and emerging issues like geopolitical conflicts, climate change, infectious diseases, and terrorism coexist and often interact. Rapid globalization, technological advances, and shifting geopolitics contribute to this intricate landscape. Thus, effective global governance and cooperation are vital as we navigate these challenges, requiring innovative and inclusive solutions for a sustainable future. What is a global government? It is a theoretical concept that envisions a single centralized authority or governing body that would have jurisdiction and authority over the entire planet. This authority would supersede the sovereignty of individual nation states and would be responsible for making and enforcing international laws, regulations, and policies on a global scale. The idea is that such a global government would address and manage various aspects of international affairs and global challenges. Key characteristics of a global government. Centralized authority. A global government would possess the highest and most centralized form of authority with the power to make decisions and enact policies that affect all countries and people worldwide. Sovereignty, pooling. Nation states would cede a portion of their sovereignty to this global authority. In fact, it will cede more than a substantial portion, allowing it to govern in areas such as international security, environmental protection, trade regulation, and human rights enforcement. Globalization has been challenging the traditional concept of sovereignty. The interconnectedness and interdependence fostered by globalization have led to a blurring of traditional boundaries as issues such as climate change, terrorism, and economic interdependence transcend national borders and require collective action. Thus, the concept of intact state sovereignty, the supreme authority of a state within its territory amid global challenges, shall be deemed as void if we are responsible humans who aim at saving our planet. In this context, the idea of prioritizing the well-being of the planet and recognizing the limitations of intact state sovereignty becomes increasingly relevant. It calls for a shift in mindset towards shared responsibility and global citizenship, where collective action and collaboration take precedence over narrow self-interest. Conflict resolution. It would have mechanisms in place to peacefully resolve conflicts between nations, potentially using diplomatic and economic means. because as the realist theory assumes that nation states, the states are unitary actors, they are acting in an international system which is anarchic, and they are always fearful. So they want to preserve the status quo, but when the balance of power is an advantage to a neighboring or quote-unquote threatening state, then states will go to war. Thus, a world government would be resolving such conflicts because, as realism suggests, war is a characteristic of the Westphalian system. Global laws and regulations. A global government would establish and enforce international laws and regulations to address a wide range of issues, including peace and security, human rights, trade, environmental protection, and more. Global institutions. It might include international institutions like a world court, a global parliament, a global executive body, and a global law enforcement or world police, all working together to manage global affairs. Resource allocation. It could manage the equitable distribution of essential resources such as food, water, and energy to ensure that basic human needs are met globally. Environmental management. A global government would oversee global environmental policies to address issues like climate change, biodiversity, conservation, and pollution control. Economic regulation. It could regulate global trade and financial systems to ensure economic stability, reduce inequality, and prevent financial crises. Human rights and justice. It would establish and uphold universal human rights standards and oversee justice systems that handle crimes against humanity and other international offenses. Currently, it is of high importance to work towards realizing the success of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Conclusion. In conclusion, a global government is a theoretical concept that envisions a single centralized authority with jurisdiction of the entire planet, supplanting the sovereignty of individual nation states. While it offers the potential for addressing global challenges and promoting international cooperation, it remains a highly speculative and controversial idea. The feasibility and practicality of implementing such a system raise complex questions related to representation, accountability, cultural diversity, and potential abuses of power. As of now, the world operates under a system of sovereign nation states. Although the sovereignty of these nation states is not intact, okay, with international cooperation occurring through various organizations such as the United Nations. The concept of a global government remains a subject of debate and exploration in the realm of international relations and political philosophy, although some individuals, reputable individuals in the field of academia are attempting to announce a draft world government by activating some world districts. For example, like Dr. Glenn Martin. Thank you. Thank you. Now it's your turn, I believe, Pamela, and then we leave the floor for our attendees to raise their questions and concerns.
Okay. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That was a good introduction to the concept of world government and some of the pros of world government. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to go through some slides as well. And so I will speak about the cons, i.e. the disadvantages that I see for a world government. And okay, I'll be coming from the perspective of what happens with organizations the way we've been implementing them in the world today. And so I'm going to use the children's story of the Wizard of Oz to speak about the problems that I see with the types of organizations, the governments, the corporations, the NGOs, that the way we currently have them implemented in the world. And so the Wizard of Oz is a story written in 1900 by Frank Baum. He's actually written 14 books in this series. And there's a lot of speculation about the political and economic meaning of these books that he has written. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to follow these 5 characters and look at the possible cons, disadvantages of a world government. So the story begins with a tornado that picks Dorothy and her dog Toto up from her home in Kansas and lets them down in the land of Oz. There she meets and wanders around with 3 characters, the first of them being the Scarecrow. And the Scarecrow wanted a brain. The Scarecrow has said, "It is such an uncomfortable feeling to know one is a fool." Have you ever felt this way? So many of our human organizations currently in the world are organized as dominant hierarchical systems, which is essentially a pyramidal structure. And the 1 or 2 or 3 people at the top, the ones that are shown with the brains in this diagram, at the top of the 1 or 2 or 3 people at the top of this organization, they make the decisions and then they tell others what to do. This results in most people waiting to be told. Their brains are not fully functional. And we've been organizing in this way for so long that we don't know there are actually other possibilities. So some of the other possibilities of how we can organize is we can have a self-organizing system, or it can be a networked organization or a democratic organization. So an organization like this is structured in such a way that basically all of our brains are fully functional and we're communicating well with each other. And so there is a lot of experimentation going on in the world with how can we restructure our organizations to make sure that everybody is fully contributing to what is happening in the organization. So the next character that Dorothy wanders around with is the Tin Man. And the Tin Man wanted a heart. He has said, "You people with hearts have something to guide you and need never do wrong. But I have no heart, so I must be very careful." Have you ever noticed, does your heart ever become dormant or sidelined? Does this ever happen to you? So an organization generally begins with a purpose that really provides true value to customers and perhaps even to the world. But when we watch closely as an organization grows, we see that the purpose often the purpose usually ends up morphing into one of keeping the organization going. After all, it's from the organization that the people make their income to support their lives and their families. The purpose becomes one of self-sustainment of the organization. Basically, that's an equivalent way of saying it becomes one about profit rather than purpose. Okay, and this shift in purpose is often hardly perceptible. We don't really see what's happening. Okay, so our hearts live in our human bodies. But since only a few brains are functional in such organizations, what you essentially have is an overall separation between the brains and the hearts that are in the organizations, in the different bodies. So people actually within these organizations, they can become distant from their heart, i.e. from their emotions. However, ethics and morality live in the human bodies. They're in our hearts. Ethics and morality is not in the systems and structures, the organizations that we've created. So given that there's been a separation between brains and hearts, but the ethics and morality lives in the body, what would be the impact on our organizations? And are we seeing the effects of this in the world? So Dorothy's next companion was the lion, and the lion wanted courage. He's, after all, the king of beasts. And the lion has said, "I have always thought of myself very big and terrible. Yet such small things as flowers came near to killing me, and such small animals as mice have saved my life. How strange it all is." So, fear, it's good, it's bad. Is it using me? Or can I turn it upside down and use it? So in the organizational context, so given the pyramidal structure of our dominant hierarchical systems, when we're making changes to the system, this usually results in problems arising in a different part of the system. So in this diagram, I'm showing the problematic part of the system as a tipped pyramidal structure. So the green part is the problematic part. So if there's some kind of problem, such as within a healthcare system, we see that one group of people is being helped more than others. When we have this kind of structure and we go in to try and make a change to the system to correct a problem, invariably a different part of the system will then end up breaking in response to our attempts to change it. And so making changes in these kinds of systems is not easy. And after our attempts at making changes, we can actually lose the courage to try and fix things. And after all, we have whole educational institutions that we've set up to teach us how to make changes within such dominant hierarchical systems. So the next character is the Wizard of Oz. So Dorothy and her three companions, they end up going to the Wizard of Oz for help. The wizard appears strong and powerful. He says, "I am Oz, the great and powerful. Who are you? Who are you?" But after Toto, the dog, pulls back the curtain, "I am Oz, the great and terrible," said the little man in a trembling voice. "But don't strike me, please don't. I'll do anything you want me to." So, have you experienced acting powerful and then later feeling weak within yourself? So how does this manifest within a dominant hierarchical organization? So within a dominant hierarchical organization, which I've depicted with the green box, with the pink box, and it looks like an organization chart. So within a dominant hierarchical organization, we always end up having elements of self-organizing. And the self-organizing I've depicted by the waves and the spirals and the dots. But the self-organizing that's within one of these systems is not necessarily acknowledged or even recognized. The top-down organization chart is seen as the picture of the organization. However, I remember long ago when I was working in one of these dominant hierarchical systems, and if I really wanted to ensure something happened, if it was something very important, I knew who to go to make sure that whatever it was needed to happen. Basically, I ignored the organization chart. So when I did that, I was operating in the self-organizing system, even though people only saw the organization chart as the structure, the system. So the grand illusion is that things work in a top-down fashion. But do they? So Dorothy is away from home and having a great adventure with her 3 companions. She is on the yellow brick road wearing red shoes. I view Dorothy as the one who is exploring different ways of being, different ways of organizing. In fact, Dorothy said, "If we walk far enough, we shall sometime come someplace." Can we explore? Can we develop prototypes until we come to a place where things just work? Where things work well in this world for all of us, including all life on this planet. And Toto the dog, Toto is always there with Dorothy and her companions. My view is that Toto represents the unconditional and love and trust that we all need for a healthy world. And so basically, the earth itself is really, it's a self-organizing system, or you could say it's a fractal of self-organizing systems. There's the big self-organizing systems, and then there's the weather, and then there's the hydrological system and the human systems, and all within this massive self-organizing system. And it's been evolving naturally for billions of years. But our human systems, represented by those little triangles on top, we've set them up mostly to be dominant hierarchical systems. And one of the things that happens is that adapting and evolving is difficult for these dominant hierarchical systems and wrought with unexpected outcomes. Basically, they have more pyramidal qualities, which is about being solid and the same for thousands of years. Whereas the Earth, the planet, is a self-organizing system, which means that it is naturally evolving and growing and adapting. And then our dominant hierarchical systems are not able to keep up and adapt and evolve and grow as the planet is changing. So we also do see dominant hierarchical systems in nature with some of the animal species, but we see more violence in those species where you do have dominant hierarchical systems. So our human-made dominant hierarchical systems can become tyrannical. And fear both results from the tyranny that we sometimes see, and it also can result in the tyranny happening in these dominant hierarchical systems. So personally, my observation is that a distant master never works. So to summarize, I'm going to turn off my screen sharing for a minute and then back on. So to summarize, basically, in a world with dominant hierarchical systems, decisions are made by the brains that are at the top of these pyramids here. Decisions are made usually to keep the existing structure going, even if it's not working. And our hearts are basically hidden deep within the system. They end up being separated from the brains making the decisions. Our hearts are inside here. So even though the earth itself is a self-organizing and constantly evolving and changing, our human systems cannot keep up with the changes because of the more static structures that we build on this earth. In this world, we end up not trusting each other. Ethics and morality are low. How can we change this? When all of our brains and hearts are fully online and connected, so here you can see the brains and the hearts, they end up becoming connected. And all of us as individuals are with connected brains and hearts, and we all have a say in this world.
Wonderful, Pamela.
So all of our bodies with their connected brains and hearts are fully online and communicating. So in a world like this, we can learn and become able to make changes in the world. Trust will increase. We'll have a lot more transparency. In the current world, there's a lot of chaos right now. And that chaos actually excites me because what I know is that creativity comes from the chaos. I am seeing it now. There's many people and groups that are doing really good work in the world. So I'm going to share my screen again. Okay. Paula Underwood was a woman who stood with her feet in both the Indigenous and the Western worldviews. She tells an ancient story about the creation of the world. In the beginning, there was Thought Woman, and she was whole. After a while, Spider Woman came and spun out of the wholeness of thought the individuation of perception, spun the threads of individuation and wove a universe with it. This quote is very meaningful for me. It all begins with thought, or the word as spoken in the Christian tradition. From that one, we've created. We see ourselves as individuals and separate, but regardless, there is really only the one. There is unity. Our systems and structures can be an expression of unity, or they can be an expression of separation. And now we'll have some weaving of our own. Our presentations are complete, And so now, so we spoke about the pros and cons, and so now let's move into possibility. So as Dorothy has said, someplace where there isn't any trouble. Do you suppose there is such a place, Toto? There must be. Now imagine yourself walking down the yellow brick road, seeking a new paradigm for global governance. What would you like to see in such a world? So we're going to have a discussion now. I'd like to get your ideas. So I'll stop sharing the screen. And
Thank you, Pamela. Thank you, wonderful. I enjoyed it.
Okay. So, so let's. So now I'd like to hear back from everybody, and you know what's possible. What can we do in this world? How can we change things? So our first question is, what kind of governance system would you like to see in a new paradigm world? So please feel free, anybody feels free.
Okay, Pamela, this is Samira from Germany, and she speaks Arabic and German, so she's asking in Arabic. Okay, Samira, تفضلي.
مرحبا.
يا هلا سميرة.
سمعتيني؟ مرحبا.
أهلا.
حبيبتي أنا بدي أسأل. أهلا فيكي. بدي أسأل سؤال إنه بالنسبة للناس المعاقين، يعني في بلاد كثير مش موجودة مثلا لهم رياحتهم، ما عم بيكونوا برياحتهم المعاقين، وممكن كمان إنه ما في مدارس لهم بعد بلدان. يعني صار نحن بدنا مثلا حريه وبدنا ديمقراطيه وبدنا انه العالم متساوي، فلازم كل شيء بدنا نفكر فيه.
اوكي.
ابتسام، بالنسبه كمان للمعاقين، وبالنسبه انه لازم يكونوا كمان الناس كلها متساويه ماديا.
اوكي. Just a moment, Samira. بس لحظة. Samira is asking. She wants all disabled people to have access to employment. She wants the disabled, okay, or people with disabilities to have employment protection. This is first. And she wants to see also that all people have equal payments or equal salaries, equal benefits, like that. I will respond to Samira in Arabic, and I will inform you. I will translate it immediately to English. سميرة، بحقوق الإنسان حافظين حق الإنسان الكوت ان كوت المعاق، بس مفروض إنه البلاد يعني الحكومات تعمل enforcement، يعني تطبق الهيومن رايتس، حقوق الإنسان، يعني هي الحق على الحكومات،
القوانين بحقوق الإنسان.
ايه بالضبط، القوانين، يعني لازم القوانين نفعلها ونعملها enforcement، يعني لازم يكون ملزمين الحكومات انه تأمن شغل disabled، لذوي الحاجات الخاصة. هيدي واحد. وبالنسبة ل انه
يكونوا انه كل الناس متساويه ماديا.
هلا كل الناس متساويه ماديا، كمان هي بحقوق الانسان سميره، انه الشغل نفس الشغل بيكون له نفس الاجر، نفس الشغل له نفس الأجر.
مظبوط. أو
أوكي؟
بالنسبة كمان أوكي، وبالنسبة للديانات إنه ما يكون في تفرقة بديانات واحترام للديانات كلياتها، هذه
أوكي.
مهمة
كمان
كثير
بالهيومن
يعني
رايتس
بالنسبة
سميرة.
لي أنا كمان.
Okay. Samira has concerns about the disabled people that they don't have in many countries access to employment. And she has concerns also about religions. She wants all religions to be respected and accepted in worldwide. Okay. And she wants to see that all individuals also have equal payments, okay, for equal work. I'm informing her that her concerns are really protected in the Human Rights Declaration. However, maybe the issues, if raised, it is because of corrupt governments or because it is because of governments. Governments should enforce human rights, the implementation of human rights. Governments should punish the ones who commit violations or breaches of human rights. Thank you, Samira, for your questions. Merci لأسئلتك. أسئلة مهمة كتير. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to respond to that as well. My belief is that when we get real self-organizing systems in place, care for each other will happen automatically. And so for me, yeah, my vision is much more of a long-term vision, and there's a transition that would be needed to get there. But when we're fully present and local and we'll need human rights agreements in the interim, but once we're fully present and working in self-organizing systems, we'll be automatically taking care of each other. So is there anybody else? Is there anybody else who would like to? Matthew?
Hi. Yeah,
Hello.
I'll respond. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'll respond to both presentations. They're very good. I'll have to say I'm particularly biased a little bit towards the self-organizing idea, which is, I think, but I want to respond to the world government idea, which is more top-down. And the way I see that is that I think it's agreeable to all of us that we need laws and we need some regulations that we the world, but see, the thing is, it doesn't have to be like a world government that's telling everybody else what to do, because particularly because how would that government even be elected? How would they even decide anything in the first place if they didn't have input, a democratic input from the players involved, the countries, let's say, for instance. So really, in the end of the day, what we're really talking about is the need for agreements, like treaties, where the nations themselves agree to the need for these laws of human rights and protecting the environment and moving towards solutions of climate change. And once they agree, then there doesn't really have to be this authoritarian sense anyways, because they've already agreed. It's all, so it did start from a little bit bottom up in any ways. And even how did the nations come to their conclusions about what's good to do? Well, that would have already started from the bottom up as well in a true democracy, because people are giving their inputs about what's needed to do. So in the end of the day, I think I agree with Pamela that if you look at ecosystems and how the world works, the nature works, is that it is from the grassroots level, and it self-organizes and builds up. So the so-called world government, or I'd rather call it world alliances, world agreements is that it's built up as an agreement upon agreement. Yeah, well, I've probably talked enough. I think the self-organizing part of it was well done, and I'd like to hear more about that.
Thank you, Matthew. Is anybody else like to say something about what's possible in a new paradigm of global governance? Gita?
I was about to
Yeah.
hop in, but I see Hasina's got her hand up, so let's hear from her, and then I'm gonna
Okay.
crash. She's gonna very gracefully offer me the microphone.
Yeah, I was really glad that Matthew just said what he
Or
did,
not.
because I too was picking up on authority and enforcement. And so my question is, how can we assume, and I don't, of course, I'm also saying I don't think we can assume that an overseeing role would not be overtaken by bad people.
Hello, Gita.
Yeah.
Is your name Gita? Yes, a nice name. Gita, by having a word court that is adhered to human rights, then hopefully we will not witness tyranny.
With a what?
And checks and balances. A world court. Sorry, a world court. A world court.
Yeah, say a little bit more.
An international court, a global court, an international court.
And how would it be an integrative body, like a world court? I'm just picturing a few, not that many people overseeing everybody. So, there's a disconnect in my thinking.
I don't have I cannot envision everything clearly, but when we have a word court and branches for that court in each district of a federated earth, and checks and balances, then I believe that human rights should be preserved.
I'm just
tell me what you're thinking. Tell us.
Yeah, well, I get skeptical when I hear about an authoritarian body, which is basically what it would be in the end, who would enforce. And you use those terms, authority and enforce. And
Gita, my belief is that if we leave issues to regulate themselves by themselves, it will never work. It is not. It will never work in societies, because in societies, individuals are greedy. They are. It is my perspective. Individuals are greedy, and they will compete for scarce resources. And when doing so, they will eventually go into conflict, and this will lead to war and conflict. So we need an upper authority, okay, to put a social contract, okay, and we need that preserves the people's needs and interests. This social contract is on the behalf of the people's interests, and the people should agree to this social contract. It is not enforced upon them.
Yeah.
They agree to it.
Yeah. Don't we already have that? We have the United Nations and the UN Security General.
Yes, we have the United Nations, but the United Nations is not correcting its its flaws. There are flaws, and they are still going on. They are not correcting the flaws. Okay, for example, the veto powers, for example. The United Nations needs to be somebody's need to be needs correction, needs
Dr.
adjustment.
Dr. Ibtissam, let me jump in here for a moment. And before we dive into the specifics, I'd like to hear a couple of voices chime in too. And Richard, I took the liberty of taking your website. I appreciate this. I'd love to hear your voice. And this from the website elevatework.ca. And I think we probably have a bit of getting back to heart-oriented soul, which doesn't mean not having a structure. I think we all want a structure, but would you please speak a bit to what you've heard here today, and then we can go forward to all of it.
I'm finding myself embarrassed. I guess I did put my website up there. And there's a couple of
just
and
to
there's a
put
couple,
you at ease, just to put you at ease. A lot of what I work in ecosystem, I did a very top-down allopathic career for 20 years, and then I shifted my evil ways. And for the past 15 years, I've been surrendering my addiction to organization and structure and need for authority, right? And this whole idea of heart-centered and coming back in. I honor the ecosystem. So thank you for your embarrassment. My job is to allow the body politic. I work on physiology, and I always talk about inflammatory being the pointer, right? And it's not about turning off the siren. It's about getting the resources to the target tissue. So in that structure, God bless you for your embarrassment.
Thank you. And there was some other hands up, but I guess you were going to speak too, and I guess you were referring to me in order to speak. So, because I wanted to honor the others with hands up, but one of the things I see in the presentations and the belief systems here is the element of control and force. And I have a second website called elevatelife.ca or wisdomways.net. And I do a lot of shadow work, and I see a lot of collective shadow and belief systems. If, for example, we have the assumption and belief that all people are greedy, then in our current system, well, the top will be greedy too. And so we've got this greed throughout the system. We also have this polarization between the populace and the top. I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's always a balance, but coming from the bottom up, and that's reflected in what in world government in terms of ideal world government too, is how do we take the wishes of the populace, the people, and in a democratic system, the define from the top, to define how the top will serve the best for everyone. But I think we really need to start building the capacities within our society and healing the world from the bottom up. So that capacity within myself, if I believe everybody's evil and the leadership is greedy, if I'm projecting, chances are that's within me. And to heal that first, be the change I want to see in the world. If I want to stop war, I've got to stop the war with self, and I've got to be able to work with the groups around me, my relationships. If I can't come to peace with the people around me, what hope do we have in the world? if I can't come to peace within myself, what is my business trying to make peace in the world? So I think it starts with building that capacity within ourselves, building that capacity in small groups, bringing our communities together and upwards, so that the top is empowered from the bottom. These are some of my thoughts, but this right now, our whole paradigm is we have to control things. We have to control for chaos. And it's coming out of a belief system. Is that even true? That we have to control things? Is it coming out of fear? So is that, I think in a new paradigm, we're coming more from love, and we come back and learn how to trust each other. We have to rebuild that trust. When you put more control into the system, top down or otherwise, then it'll actually reflect in the opposite of more distrust and more chaos. The shadow has to come into the open. We have to heal the shadow, integrate the shadow in order to grow and evolve appropriately. So we have this collective shadow of we need to control people. And as long as we suppress, censor, push that down, that's typically what we do. It's the opposite. We go towards the shadow, we open up the conversation, we listen, we find our voice, we heal, we let go of the trauma, and we're in a different place with a different capacity to manage this whole thing. And I think, as Pamela suggested, we're in a great place right now, in one sense, in that we collectively are having to face the problems we've created over generations. And we have an opportunity, we have a great opportunity to say, and we don't want this anymore. What do we want? What is the possibility? And here I was embarrassed and saying something I spoke too long, so I know I'm quite.
Thank you, Richard. So,
Richard.
Hasina, did you want to say something?
I enjoyed listening to what Richard said. I also agree with that alignment within. But the one thing I do want to say is, when we're top down, it's very disempowering, because we're coming for our needs to those at the top, and we don't feel that we have it within ourselves or within our realm of ability as the masses, as the collective, to be able to do anything. And when we're looking at self-organization, it's really very empowering, because then we take it to the microcosm of our communities, and just the little groups that we have, even here at World Unity Week, and we have a feeling of, oh, of course I can step into leadership right now, because I know I have that ability within, because we're empowering each other and we're doing it in communities. So that's just my view.
Yes, thank you. Anne-Marie? Your mic is off, I think.
From my experience of life, I like the idea of self-organization systems, but I also like the United Nations, imperfect as it is, and I think it needs correction for sure. There is the Security Council with the veto. It's not evident how that could be changed and how much time it would take. But I think that if we look at self-organization systems, I think we already have a lot of self-organization systems. It's not as though we have to invent them from zero. I'm looking at the cooperative movement, like the United Farmers, the Broadbent Institute, Council of Canadians, organizations like that in Canada. I'm looking at how Indigenous peoples have obtained rights from the United Nations. The UNDRIP could not have happened without the United Nations. And the people organize themselves to put pressure on the United Nations to vote this very important human rights law, or I don't know what you would call it, but to put that into place. And now it trickles back down into the country. It's a slow process, the implementation of it, but I think that I like the idea of intellect and heart. And I think the more people get organized like that and understand that, the better the world will be. It's not a perfect world by any means, but I think without the United Nations, a lot of things would not have happened. I think when you have climate change summits, it may seem like nothing's happening, but I think the fact that people are coming from all over the world to talk about it cannot help but change hearts. That's my thinking.
Amen.
Thank
Amen.
you, Anne-Marie. So Kodra has her hand up.
Hello.
Hello, we can hear you.
Hello, Pamela. Hello, Dr. Klait. Hello, everyone, honored guests. I want to talk about the laissez-faire economics that was introduced by Adam Smith. Laissez-faire economics typically opposes significant government involvement in economics affairs. However, I believe this cannot be applied to societies. A society without a social contract or a ruling body, it will be a chaotic society, and it will be dive into crimes for competing for natural resources and survival. So please comment.
So yes, that is certainly, I think what we're seeing in the world today certainly supports what you've been saying. And one of the things that I see with my way of looking at systems and structures is that this concept that we need to be led, we need to be guided, we need a strong control structure is one that results from hundreds of years of attempts to control things. And that actually, if we would back away from that, we would be surprised at the resilience of the people that would suddenly come to the fore. And a little example that I see, it's in the natural world, but when a dam gets removed, basically an old ecosystem will return. The nature both above and below the dam becomes more healthy again, and it happens automatically. It's simply we need to remove the constraints that we've put on the river for the river to become whole again. And I believe the same thing would happen with human beings.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's very well said. And I'm moved by the richness of everybody's comments. And I have a feeling that we can do both. In Hasina's context earlier of ever evolving, where we have folks at the table, right? And we've got meetings like this, and we've got a commune space. We have people who are hungry for personal evolution. And where we have people hungry for personal evolution, then any institutional ideology that comes out of that is by nature reflective much of, as previous comments, as above, so below, and vice versa, as below, so above. And part of the, just wanted to share this very quickly because, okay, maybe not. Where did it go? Part of the platform that we wanted to create and have echo was based in the idea that where we're together, we are well, and we also get to face where we're not well. right? And what you were just suggesting, Pamela, echoes this, I think, support for all of us pioneering edge leaders who sometimes feel a sense of isolation. And I have a feeling that's the pathology that we've allowed to, roll through the social narratives the past couple of generations or maybe centuries, and where we can transcend that sense of isolation and offer a brand new space, then the practical application shows up, right? And I wanted to use that just as a reminder for a beautiful session that we had. Oops, there's a beautiful session as well, but we had a beautiful session this morning. Holy moly, I apologize for this. I just want to presence this about from a gentleman named Jeff Laporte, and I would strongly recommend everybody who has an idea of this.
That was in the Healing for Rising room.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, 12 steps for life. And I think, when we have a space where we can do this, God bless every one of us, then the emergent phenomena is one of a surprise ending, much like the wizard can everybody in the cast of the planet can play along with the idea of surprise.
I don't know if you're done. I just kind of had a thought about. Are you done yet, Tom?
I don't know. Go for it.
All right. Well, it's all related. I'm relating to you too, but I was especially resonating with what Anne Marie said overall. But it came to my mind about decentralization and decentralization of decision making, which is really kind of in essence a way of talking about freedom in the grassroots area, let's say, versus centralized decision making, which is the top down. Of course, it's like this image of the world government. Is that the thing about world? There has to be at some point protections, and that's where maybe the centralization comes in, because but they're agreed protections. It came to my mind about like the world court idea, which is kind of in America we got the Supreme Court. Well, we need some kind of court to help make sure that human rights are protected and civil rights protected, and that there's fairness in the world. So, in a way, a court has to follow a constitution. And so the constitution is the bigger picture of governance. It's something we've agreed to, a constitution of basic human rights, for instance, ecological rights, to protect nature and also human beings. That's important. And if it was just decentralization of freedom, I'm not sure. There has to be this. What I'm saying is that's going to build this bigger structure up eventually, and what would be called a world government or more of a centralized decision making could just be based on a constitution, agreed constitution, which could be evolving still. You don't have to be set in it, but it's based on rights, human rights, and the needs of the ecology and the climate that the world that we live in.
Yeah, thank you, Matt.
I totally agree with you.
It's a complex problem. It's not an easy one, but I do believe humans are up to the challenge if we really get it in the open and transparent and talk about it.
And we are here for this issue. I agree with you, Matthew. Thank you.
So Richard has his hand up, and then we'll have to stop in a couple of minutes.
Pam, it's great discussion, and I love dialogue. I think we spend a lot of time pushing information out from leaders in a top-down expert process, and there's so much emergence can happen in groups like this. I just want to come back to the story of the Wizard of Oz for a moment, because there's so much beautiful symbolism in that. Thanks, Pamela, for bringing that forward. There's the good witch and the bad witch within that, and there's Dorothy. One of the things that Glinda said to Dorothy, you always had the power to go home. All you had to do is click your heels together 3 times and you can go home. We're all wanting to go home. We're in this dream, and this dream can be a fabulous, beautiful dream, or it can be one that is full of chaos and horrible monsters and things like this. But within us, we each have the power to go home. And as soon as we put our power outside of ourselves, in some other body, in someone else, to give me freedom, we are losing our power. Our power is in us. And how do we use groups like this to bring people back to their individual power and then to our collective power, so that we can work together and let the answers emerge within that loving capacity of groups and community? How do we get there? I think this is what we're relearning how to do, not coming from a control left brain point of view, but coming back to our wholeness, a right brain, a heart centered, where the brain is led by the heart. Both are important. The governments, the world government, and the brains in a world government serving the heart of the people, I think is a great model. It's not one or the other, but it is a different way of organizing, a different belief system behind what we are trying to create. There's a paradigm shift based on love rather than fear of losing control.
Yeah. So, Dr. Ibtissam, do you want to say some closing words now? You're muted. You're muted.
Thank you for all you esteemed attendees. I want to conclude with this. I believe that implementing and working towards promoting and realizing the SDGs, okay, will lead us to a better place. This is my vision. Thank you.
So, thank you, Hasina. Thank you for letting us use the room.
Well, Tom and I are honored to have these kinds of discussions in this convergence room. So thank you to everyone here.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
A moment. Please stay for just a moment.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank
Samira,
you.
thank you for attending. Brahim, thank you for attending.
Yeah, thank you all. This is a beautiful bridge